order. We'll start off with the land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississauga and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Their shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. And with that, we'll now move on to the approval of the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services? We got Bo and Lindsay already drew a blank all of a sudden. Any comments or questions about the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Approved. Great. Any declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. First up, we have the receipt of our last meeting minutes of March 20th. Can we get a mover and seconder? Bo and Shannon, great, thank you. Any comments or questions with regards to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Perfect. All right. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll then move on to our items. First up is the municipal alcohol policy for review. Can I get a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor? Michelle, Lindsay, thank you. Who would like to speak to it first? John.
I shall introduce it, thank you. Perfect. So the municipal alcohol policy was prepared back in 2014. I believe it was 2012 or early 2013 where the province made some significant changes to the Liquor Control Act. That's not the full name, I should have drawn a blank. But following that, a number of public health agencies, including New York Region Public Health, got together and reviewed the new legislation and provided a bunch of recommendations. Following that, the town looked at our municipal alcohol policy and revised it at that time. That's been about 11 years now, so it's more than due for a refresh. And there's been another slight update to the Liquor Control Act as well. So we're just, it's time for us to take a look at it. A couple things that we've identified that we're reviewing in the process is nothing major. We didn't really identify anything major, but we've identified that we're making sure, again, it's in compliance with the new Liquor License Control Act, that's it. But it's all minor little details about that. We're also reviewing it to ensure compliance with the town's recent update to our insurance policy. Some changes, administrative changes to our permitting process, things like that. Updating some of our facility eligibility listings, fairly minor, things like that. So that's what we've identified, and then what we're coming to this group for is asking for your input, inviting your input and suggestions. So if you'd like to review it, if you have any comments, questions, recommendations, we invite that feedback. We ask that you provide that by October 16th, just so that we can keep on with our timelines we're planning to bring forward the recommendations for the new policy revisions in early December to council. And if you have any questions between now and while you're reviewing it, please reach out to Nicole or email it in the memo.
We use this space for questions too. We had a chance to. Okay. The only one that really gave me pause is in section 10.2, letter M, because letter L says ensure that no person shall sell or supply alcohol to a person under 19. And then M is shall not sell or supply alcohol to a person who appears to be under 19.
Yeah, I think that I believe, I'm going by memory here, that was taken from the legislation at the time, where it's just, they're covering everything. It's not just with the, that comes into where you're checking for, the judgment call, where you're checking for identification is not only the 19th metro, but if somebody appears that they might not be 19, you should be asking for identification.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? So I have one. So just to be clear, so I mean, you haven't really revised this policy yet, right? You didn't speak to the fact that some of the facilities aren't listed, some of the parks aren't listed, all of that needs to be updated.
Correct.
Obviously, since 2014, we've added a fair number of facilities, parks, et cetera. But, when you talk about what's eligible and what's not eligible, has there been any thought about sort of changing that criteria in terms of how you're picking them?
Specifically, what we're looking at is not really focusing so much on the ineligible. Like I have specific ones that we identified that are more commonplace. But we had a list of ineligible or we were saying that other parts that weren't on the eligible list are by approval only, because typically we don't usually allow special occasion permits where there's a large gathering of youth, like around the special sports fields. But we're finding more and more of the adult leagues using time, and some of them want to have more special events. So what we're really considering at this point is removing things that are truly ineligible and just saying, here's the primary locations. Other locations are would still have to be approved by the director. Ultimately, they all have to be approved anyway to get a special occasion permit for a park. But we're just we're taking away some of the hard and fast, not here, because we're finding circumstances have changed.
Right, so I think that's where I was just wondering in terms of the exceptions or the flexibility, especially if somebody wants to have it on a continual basis, right? I know there's been some comments brought up about the bars and maybe, they're having some thought to that as well. And so as opposed to having to come to the town for a special permit application every time, now's the time to kind of address that, right? No different than the baseball fields that we built. Let's say there's a men's league and they wanted to do something like that on a more regular basis rather than come for a permit every single time. There should be some provisions within there whereby permits can be for a season or standard or whatever. So still subject to approval, but just an alternative.
That's a perfect example. The bars in particular, we've been talking about the new field. They're bringing a lot more games there. They still have, because of the way the permitting works through the AGCO, they still have to come to the town each individual time for approval. It's part of the process to get approval for their special occasion permit from the AGCO. But we're just trying to identify that it's not a restriction to that. Like Shepherd's Bush would have been previously identified as a place where you can't do it. We're saying no, you can if the town approves it.
Okay. I guess if I'm an organization, I'd like some assurances that the request wouldn't be unreasonably denied if you're going to do it on a consistent basis.
And that's what we're trying to soften some of the language that just. It doesn't make it sound so restrictive.
Sure. And do we need to make any changes for Town Park and Carberry and all that stuff?
No, nothing. Like we're just, like I said, we're really removing some of what were identified as ineligible and just making any location the opportunity exists in any location subject to town approval. And what we tend to do is look at each request on an individual basis. For example, if somebody wanted a special occasion permit during the June festival for Aurora FC, where 95% of the people there are underage, we would probably deny that. But if the bars want to serve alcohol at their adult games, we don't see any reason not to approve that.
Great. Any other questions about the papers? Michelle?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. On section 12, the security, and I remember we brought this up in previous committee meetings around the Aurora Community Center and the liquor license, etc. a concern particularly is that it states the permit holder shall provide security sufficient to ensure that unauthorized persons do not attend the event. But there's no threshold or risk assessment required on who approves to ensure that that security is sufficient. And I'm thinking I know of previous history of incidents in the town where there's been some like criminal activity. And my only suggestion for that would be that there should be some sort of threshold or some sort of process through the town to approve. Like they have to submit a security plan, but who is saying that it's sufficient enough to authorize that permit? That would be my only comment on that note. Thank you.
Thank you. So currently, who approves this security plan?
So we approve the security plan through the facility bookings team, but we will consult with bylaw or with our special event supervisor based on their experience. Usually we will have a consultation with bylaw to help determine what's appropriate. A lot of the time it depends on the nature of the event. Each event is different. So we will look at things like the location of the event, what is happening at the event, how many access points are there to that particular location, and the anticipated attendance of the event would be some of the things we've looked at.
So to Michelle's point, though, in the past, there may have been some issues. We always kind of look at it from a variance perspective and say, how can we improve our process to prevent it going forward?
We typically internally debrief any major event so that we identify what did we learn from this event, what can we apply to the future going forward, for sure.
Yeah, because I remember many years going back, we had a particular problem at Thrift Fest one time, kind of thing, and I know that Shelley and her team kind of got together to say, okay, what can we learn to prevent this going forward?
And we did.
Yeah, great. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt and comments to be forwarded to staff. Thank you. Next up is our third party events policy review. Can I have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor? Dan? Ann? Carl, thank you. Is this you again, John?
This is me again.
Perfect.
Okay, similarly, the third-party events policy was originally prepared in 2013. It works hand in hand with the municipal alcohol policy, and at the time, excuse me, at the time it was written, it was the third-party events and outdoor town facilities, because at the time it really addressed an increase in permits we were experiencing in parks. Excuse me. And certainly that, so now what we're finding is, especially, we're getting more and more interest in indoor events. We're having more larger events in the arena floors when the ice is out, and now with Town Square, we're having significantly more events there as well. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is not limiting this to an outdoor policy. If this is just in general, addressing third-party events and how we manage those events within any indoor or outdoor town facility. And again, this one is just, it's 12 years old. There was no major issues or concerns. It's 12 years old and overdue for a refresh. So that's what we're doing. We're looking at it. Again, some of the minor things that we've identified so far is insurance requirements, again, in compliance with our new policy, updates to our permitting process. One of the key changes that we're thinking of recommending the council, and certainly want to invite this committee's feedback, is right now there's a requirement for us to go to council if an event meets certain criteria, such as it's for more than one day, it's going to restrict public access to a park, for example, like where we're fencing off a park for a weekend or something like that. We have to bring that to council for approval in advance. When that was first put in place, we had a shorter lead time to go to council with reports, and now we've got a longer lead time to prepare our reports. Plus, also we're finding that there's just it's not that often that we go to it, and the council approval that we get is authorization for staff to review it in accordance with the policy and then staff decide whether or not to approve it. So what we're recommending, or we're thinking of recommending, is that we remove that step of having to go to council, and just have staff, have the director authorize it or not for the, just like I said, maybe it's once a year or once every couple of years that we have one that meets that criteria that requires us to go to council. But this will help streamline it because, right, if given our current timelines, somebody would really have to make sure they're coming to us with an application a good 6 months in advance. By the time we go through everything and get it to council, and then they still have time to plan the event. Otherwise, we could be faced where we have their approval 6 weeks before they have their event is scheduled, and they haven't had, not knowing, they don't really have time to plan it now and advertise it or promote it. And then other than that, that's what we've identified so far. And again, we're inviting any input from the committee if you think there's anything else we should be looking at or considering.
Comments or questions?
John, this, if I recall, is only for third parties are not applicable to the field use. So if it's a soccer event on a soccer field, it doesn't fall within this category. It's only for things that are not for the intended purpose of the parks.
That's correct. This is really looking at special events, like if you want to have a music festival in a park, it doesn't even really apply to tournaments. So like a tournament is still within the normal field use.
Correct.
But yeah, if you were looking at, you wanted to have a car show in a park. Well, that's unusual use, yeah.
Is there any assessment done of facility damage or the risk of facility damage? For instance, if you're running a car show on a turf field, there might be some concerns about how that would do. What's the process for that?
It's a case by case thing, and we just basically look at what is the request, does it make sense? Like for anything in a park, we certainly consult with the parks team to get their input. We certainly do look at things like that. Like we would, for a good example, we would never let a car on an artificial turf field. We probably wouldn't approve that in a park either, because if it's everything goes well and it's dry, we're fine. Get a little bit of rain, now we've got thousands of dollars of natural turf damage to a park that we have to repair. So we try to avoid things like that. Obviously there are some exceptions with our own major events like Ribfest or whatever, where you need to have large outdoor space. But we do go through an assessment of what is, based on previous experience, what is likely to happen.
Would there be different requirements for grass facilities versus turf facilities versus indoor facilities? Because a music festival with obviously cigarettes would be a much more serious thing on a turf field or an indoor than it would an outdoor grass field.
Yeah, we look at, like I said, we look at each one on a case by case basis and assess it according to the specifics of that. What is the requested venue? What are they looking to do with that venue, et cetera?
Is that assessment public? Is that assessment open to, for instance, the primary field user? If a music festival is approved and the primary field user said, we're concerned about that, and they have access to what the town reviewed and approved?
We typically wouldn't consult with the user groups. Most of our user groups, we have a large number of user groups that use, and most of them use a large number of facilities. So what we do, we consult with the professional training staff, in-house. Like I say, if it's in a park, we're going to work with our parks team on that. If it's in a building, we work with our facilities team on that as well. So we do that assessment internally. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of standards. I mean, an artificial turf field, for example, we don't allow food or drink on there, period. We are, one of the main reasons why they're fenced is because we don't want anything else on there except for people and sports equipment.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that I can't remember any events on any of our turf fields in the last number of years. Most of the events, all of those kind of ones, they've been in the parks or where it makes sense. Yeah, sure. And your point's bang on in the sense that we want to make sure if there are huge investments with some of these facilities, we want to make sure that we're always looking at the maintenance and the overall benefit of the community. And we're fortunate to have a few other spaces that are directed for sure.
I guess, for example, if there's tournaments, some of the larger tournaments, they want to bring in food vendors maybe. Those food vendors need to be off field. The the players are not allowed to bring food on the field. It has, all that has to take place off field.
But, you know, I think you raised a good point. Is there a mechanism for an organization to at least raise their concerns if they hear of it, right? Rather than come delegate to council?
Certainly. If at any point in time, if any of our user groups is aware of something that concerns them, they're always welcome to reach out to our bookings team. We welcome that feedback on an ongoing basis. Many groups do that right now, you know, they identify something, because in large part, the user groups are our eyes and ears out there. Staff aren't out there on a daily basis, so we actually rely heavily on user groups to notify us. Oh, we just observed something, maybe it's damage. Property damage, that helps us identify it to fix it. Or they observe a concern with the use of a facility. They'll identify that to us, and then we can investigate it further, but that helps bring it to our attention. So people are always welcome to reach out to the bookings team, or the bookings administrators specifically that they deal with, or the team in general, to raise any questions or concerns.
But it may be something worthwhile looking into the policy to have a mechanism to formalize it a little bit, that there, you know, that there should be a concern. This is the way that can be addressed, either through direct confrontations with, you know, the director or someone. You know, I get it informally, they're always free to give everybody a call, but it's not a bad idea to have it. You know, at the end of the day, those user groups are our key stakeholders. They're very much part and parcel of, you know, what makes this community great, and being involved all the time. And like you said, they take ownership of the fields and the facilities, and so it would be good to at least, you know, if they have concerns, we have a mechanism by which they can share those.
Some of those facilities are joint investments, so. Yeah.
Specifically,
Yeah.
just
In general, yes.
In general, right? I mean, you know, we certainly don't want to do anything in the short term, but that's long-term impact to any of the organizations. Some fire performance in the gymnasium, and all of a sudden there's no volleyball for like 2 months. Something went wrong.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Michelle? Sorry. Then Lindsay.
Okay, through you, Chair, not really a recreational Parks and Rec thing, but in section 6.3, I just, knowing that it's been over 10 years since this policy has been updated, and you guys obviously know where I'm coming from a professional perspective, but we've seen a big change in how events are operated and the type of events. So when I look at 6.3, I think that could be updated, as it says, provide a meaningful public benefit, but also protecting the Town of Aurora brand with certain events. Like, I think that needs to be understood and discussed as part of the approval process for permits as well. Like, what does the Town of Aurora symbolize, and how could potential events impact the brand, or just in general create concerns for the community?
Good point. John, any comment? Just making a note to add that to the consideration. That, I mean, certainly right now, that is something that if we flagged anything, we would consult with both our corporate communications team as well as the CAO, and, you know, for further consideration.
But it's good to have it involved.
Yeah.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, it doesn't seem like it's a big risk, but has there ever been a situation where the council has said no to an event that had to bring forward? So skipping that step, does that present any additional risk?
No, that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the reasons why we thought it might just help speed them along, because in the 15 years I've been here, we haven't had anything turned down by council, so.
My question pertained to events that maybe don't, like, what's the threshold for an event that meets this policy? I see this policy and my reaction was, wow, this is burdensome. And so the question is, is it objective potentially to encourage events through a different process, or how do we manage that?
Or on the flip side, is it too cumbersome that it prevents people from going forward?
maybe they don't go forward, or maybe they go forward without following the processes. It's just something that I was.
I'm just double checking right now.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that we're looking at clarifying in the new revision. We've gotten some feedback from some different areas of our town that part of it was a little bit unclear. So right now, I would say that in general, this policy applies to anything that is like a large scale event. Outside of tournaments, it would be something that takes place usually in more than one facility, or again, restricts public access to an entire facility. It has a large number of attendees expected. We're just trying to finalize how that definition can be written in such a way that it doesn't specifically restrict other events. Like for example, at our town square, we often have bookings that are in our performance hall, and then we have a couple of other auxiliary rooms booked. So we can't really say it's, taking place in more than one room, because that would restrict those types of events and put them under this policy. It's more those large scale events. So I think an attendee threshold is something
That's really helpful. Maybe just to clarify, I was thinking like somebody's running a yoga class in the
No,
park
no.
and they're subject to this policy. It wasn't clear when I read it. So thank you.
Over the years, we've had a number of people who run recurring events. I think it's great that it's here in front of the committee and get everybody's input. But are we also reaching out to some of those stakeholders or users who have, under this policy, thrown events just to get their feedback as well about what worked, what didn't work, what suggestions they might have?
We haven't done that, and we weren't planning on doing that as part of this exercise, because what we do is typically we get feedback from those event organizers after the event. We get that feedback from them at the time, and we currently don't have anybody right now that falls under this policy of any upcoming events that we're aware of at this stage. As well, I guess it's the home show.
Yeah.
The home show, we have regular feedback with the chamber on that already. Yeah, so we typically try to solicit feedback on an ongoing basis as these happen, as opposed to just when we're looking at the policy review.
So Aurora Palooza doesn't fall under this policy? David Hurd's music doesn't fall, when he does his vinyl dance parties, doesn't fall under this.
So what David Hurd does with us is usually in partnership with the town. I know it is small enough where it doesn't really fall under this policy. Aurora Palooza would. Aurora Palooza is not coming back to Aurora. But it's
I'm just saying that in terms of, looking at learning and getting feedback.
But what we have done is before, during, and after each Aurora Palooza, as an example, we would have conversations with them. And so we always get that feedback at the time. So we feel that we have the feedback already because we get it on an event by event basis. We always do that kind of follow through and get their feedback after each event.
I can just add, I think we do have a couple of events that take place on our arena floors that currently don't fall under this policy because it's a professional events policy, but they would fall under the policy if it's indoor and outdoor events. But they're essentially already following what we're doing, maybe they follow the same obligation process. So they're tied to all the same rules which are dictated by the region and by the province. We're basically just outlining what everyone else has told us we must follow for them.
I think that would be my question. So the intention with this is to have one overarching for outdoor and indoor policy. Okay, and then is there currently an indoor one that in the review will see that we're looking at the outdoor ones? There's an indoor one as well that will be.
So we don't have one specifically right now. We're kind of using this outdoor policy to guide how we deal with these indoor larger special events, because the only policy that really applies to them currently is our facility allocation policy, and it's not really designed to deal with these large scale special events. So we're following our indoor, like our facility allocation policy applies to all of our facilities. So we're following that when we have those events, but then where there are additional restrictions and rules that are outlined in our outdoor events policy that make sense to follow for an indoor event, we're doing that already.
Other comments, questions? See, none. Last thing I would say is just, I've heard before on the council table, when you bring the policy, track changes are always helpful for us. All right, so we can see what's old, what's new.
Great. All those in favor of receiving?
Great, thank you. Next up is the sports plan update status report. Can I get a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? Dan? Michelle? I guess this is you, Lisa.
It is me, yes.
Perfect, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to bring this report back to this committee because a number of individuals in this group were part of the development of the sport plan in the first half of before this group turned over in this year of 2025. Some members of this committee were quite involved in the development when we were working with our consultants to do the sport plan update. It was sort of summer 24 and we finished right at the end of the year or beginning of 2025. So I wanted to circle back and just let the committee know how the sport plan, the main features of it and what it ended up looking like. So it did get approved by council in May. And essentially it landed on 4 pillars, we called them. And they are leadership development and volunteer support, sport participant engagement, community sport sustainability, and sport tourism. And in the report, I put sort of a short definition of what each of those cover. These pillars came out of what we heard during the consultation phase during the development of the sport plan. So they came from the sport community, general surveys that we did, community partners, community sport organizations that we talked to. The community engagement piece of this was quite extensive. As I said, there were surveys, there were sport consultation with this group and other advisory committees. So that's how this plan was developed. It all came from what we heard during the consultation. So the leadership development and volunteer support is about the organizations being able to sustain themselves and making sure that they are strong and that they're following the policies, procedures, the rules. A lot of them have provincial bodies and national bodies, NSOs and PSOs, where a local organization sort of runs under their governance. So they've got a lot of responsibilities under as a sport. In certain sports do, not all of them, but some do. So that piece is about ensuring that our local sport organizations are strong, that they have the resources that they need. We know that the majority of the individuals running these organizations are volunteers. Some do have paid staff, but very few. So we want to make sure that we're supporting the actual organizations so they can run their activities in town. So that's sort of leadership development and volunteer support. And then under each one of these pillars, there are some just strategic initiatives and tactics. And each, the tactics are identified short-term, medium-term, long-term. This was a 5-year update. So we're in the short term right now of about 1 to 2 years. Medium term is meant to be like that 3-year mark, and then long-term is more 4 to 5 years. So some of these strategic initiatives and tactics under leadership development and volunteer support are things like helping organizations source training for their leaders, including their board members, but their coaches, their referees, all the people who help run these organizations. And again, leadership empowerment for groups not traditionally represented in sport leadership. So again, looking at your board and making sure that it's inclusive or that it is welcoming to anybody who might want to sit on a board or participate in a sport organization. And then creating administrative tools and templates for LSOs. Again, that's around their governance, policy. So that would include things like policies, procedures, insurance, best practices, that sort of thing. So that's sort of that leadership development volunteer piece. The next piece is the sport participant engagement, which is really in a nutshell what the sport plan aims to do. That in a short sort of definition, the goal of the sport plan is to increase sport participation in town. Which, if you start thinking about that, there's a lot involved in that. But that's where this sport participant engagement piece is really sort of drills down into that piece. and making sure that, again, organizations that are offering sports in town have the resources that they need, and that they are open, accessible to anyone in the community who might want to participate in sport, that things like fees and costs and equipment are not a barrier, that they have access to facilities that they need at the right times. That's, again, easier said than done because we have a shortage of facilities, but there's a balance there. So things like that. And then sports sustainability, again, talks about, it sort of relates back to the first one around volunteer development, because again, we know that most of these organizations are run by volunteers, and volunteer burnout is a very real problem. Often, people stay on these boards for years and years because they just can't seem to get off, and they don't have great succession plans for making sure that these organizations are able to sustain themselves. So again, just providing resources to help organizations sustain themselves and build some kind of succession plan. And the last one is sport tourism, and that, sort of goes without saying. There's a lot of benefits to bringing sport to town. It's a very competitive business, sport tourism, and again, it's we're very limited with what we can do around the facilities that we have and that sort of thing. But there's definitely some opportunities for sure in the town of Aurora to capitalize on sport tourism. So we're going to delve into that a little bit more. So in terms of actioning on some of these pillars and initiatives, we have created 3 working committees that are just starting to meet and talk about how to really get down into the weeds of achieving some of these things. So the first group is the governance working group. So again, that's the group that's going to work on helping create policies, procedures, templates, for boards and those best practices. There is an environmental SCAN working group. That is a group where we would like to create a baseline in terms of increasing participation in sport and identifying barriers. We need a baseline by which where we're starting from. So is it, we want to look at how many women are participating in sport, what ages, persons with disabilities, how many of them are participating in what sport. So we're calling that the environmental SCAN. It's who's participating currently in sport, and groups that are not, how can we remove barriers to ensure that everyone who wants to participate in sport can participate in sport. So this group is working on data collection essentially. So really going to be working with some of the sport groups in terms of what does your current registration look like? How many people do you have? Men, women, ages, abilities. It's gathering that data so we can create a baseline, and in 5 years from now we can look at it and say, have we seen increase in these areas? So that's one of the working groups. And the last working group right now is the leadership working group. And that again is about developing the boards and organizations around trainings, certifications, programs. What do the sport groups need to build themselves up and make themselves strong? So an invitation went out to a number of all of our LSOs and CSOs in town and some other community partners around sitting on these working groups. And so each group has probably 3 to 5 individuals on it. Michelle, I believe you're on one of them. Yeah. And our sport development specialist, Haley, is working with each one of these groups as the staff liaison. So they're just starting to meet. They've got their meetings scheduled for all of this fall. And they're going to help us develop a plan to tackle some of these strategies that we need to look at in order to implement the sport plan. And that's just our starting point. We have obviously other areas that we need to look at. There's no working group yet on sport tourism. There's some things we're doing there first before we go out to the community. But that's the approach right now is working with these groups and working with our community for them to sort of tell us a little bit more about specifically what do you need? Although we gathered a lot of information during the development of the sport plan, like I said, now we're into the weeds. Now we're into the nitty-gritty tactics of how do we achieve some of these strategies, and that sort of thing. So this is the start with these three working groups, and we'll sort of go from there in terms of, you know, how they land. It's going to be a bit of a snowball effect because, you know, these groups are going to come up with some ideas and ways to do the work that we need to do, and then it's going to continue to snowball. But key to us is getting the community involved, the sport community involved, and our other community partners to help us do this work, and again, tell us in more detail how they think we can gather this information and achieve these goals that we need to achieve. So that's where we're at right now. And I think that's about it in terms of what I wanted to highlight for the community. I just want to let the group know that if you are interested in sitting in any of these working groups and your organization didn't get an invitation, or you're not aware of your organization getting an invitation, there's certainly time to join these committees. If you've got interest, you can just contact me and I'll connect you with our sport development specialist, Haley. But because like I said, community involvement did not end with the development of the work plan. It actually just started. It's just starting. We really need the community to work with us on now achieving the goals and the strategies in the work plan. So like I said, I just want to circle back and let the group know where we were at with the sport plan, because many of you were involved. The entire sport plan, the detailed work plan, is on the town's website if you wanted to have a look at it. And certainly we'll keep this group updated as you know, we're looking for information. We've got opportunities for volunteers and involvement and that sort of thing. So that's about it.
So, and just that last point with regards to, you know, if anybody wants to get involved in working groups, if there are groups watching, you know, later or whatever on YouTube
Yes.
that are also interested,
Yes.
just reach out to you.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's not too late.
Perfect.
As I said, I was just going to say the invitation did go out to all of our local sport groups and community partners, but sometimes it gets lost in terms of who it gets sent to and that sort of thing. So
Is there any notification in the newspaper and on that as well?
I don't think so.
Yeah, or maybe
Be on the website though, on the sport plan page website.
maybe talk to Carly to see if there was a post or something.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Lindsay?
Yeah, it's kind of around the same thing of what I was gonna touch on, perhaps it's not the right topic for engaging different groups in the working groups themselves, but just something around the environmental scan and the surveys. And building on what you said around engaging like the CSOs and LSOs and registration and all that. I would encourage to think about what are the other non-traditional paths, because it's easy to engage people in surveys who are already engaged with the community, whether it's in sport or more broadly. And so are there, you know, newcomer to Canada groups, other cultural groups, those sorts of things that traditionally do face barriers to sport in a different cultural environment than they grew up in. And so making sure you're engaging the groups that may actually have barriers versus just working with the groups that don't have the barriers.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's what we're hoping the group will be able to sort of guide us on in terms of that. Because we know getting that information could be challenging.
Yes.
And we're well aware of that. So we're going to have to do the best we can with the information that we get to create that baseline to be able to measure any difference in a 5-year period. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is about the baseline. I understand that work hasn't been done to fully set it yet, but I'm curious, is Aurora a place where participation in sport is average, below average, above, like, where are we working from at a high level? Based on the work that was done.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I would say based on the information that we have, we're probably about average. Based on the information that we're getting from the PSOs, the NSOs, and the data that we do have, I would say we're probably average, which means that participation in certain sports is declining, and participation in certain age groups is declining. So we know, like youth girls dropping out at like 12 and 13, right? That's a national trend. So those are the kinds of things, that's really all the information we have to go on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even that to me is, so if you have some database from the larger organizations, that
Yes.
can help lead to
Yes.
concrete action of, hey, there's very low volleyball participation in with women in Aurora relative to
Yep.
other regions. That to me is, those insights might be what helps make this, increase participation as well.
There are some benchmarks and stuff in the Parks and Rec master plan as well, that talk
Very cool.
about just participation, but in terms of, what we're trying to achieve from a facility or parks perspective per, X number of residents as well.
Yeah, oh, that's great, it's exciting that we're working on this.
Yeah.
Other comments and questions?
What's the timeframe for the work groups?
So right now, their meetings are scheduled till the end of the year, but like I said, it's a bit of a snowball effect. So we feel like the very initial work that we wanna get done, ideally we can get it done at the end of the year. That doesn't mean the environmental scan is gonna be done by the end of the year. It just means our process in terms of how we're gonna gather the information should be mapped out by the end of the year. Then next year, the work of gathering the data through the various methods that this group identifies, that work will start. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Chad?
Wasn't there a lot of data collected by the consultants over the last two plans that sets benchmarks and sets where we are relative to other communities?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that data was not part of their scope of work.
On this one, but
On
the
this-
previous one, was this?
I don't have, if it was, it was before my time, I don't have that information. Again, it was more of a bigger, a higher level look at sport. My understanding is we don't have that granular data that we would like to get.
Maybe John recollects, but I remember there was number of facilities per
Oh,
participation,
yeah, that's the master plan.
per,
Yeah.
yeah, so we have a lot of those benchmarks, correct? And where we stand as against other similar sized communities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do, but it's at a very high level because it was one small piece informing the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I would say that there isn't enough detail in there to really inform the sport plan as far as where we want to take the sport plan in next steps. We want to get more granular in the data. The Parks and Rec Master Plan is very high level.
But I think it's still a starting point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that there is some, you can build on that data, but certainly let's not forget that it's there. Sure. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the report? Carry. Moving on to new business, and I'm just gonna change up a little bit. Not only more honoring to see if you have any new business, but our next meeting is in 2 months, November. And so I'd also like to hear from you if there's anything particular that you'd like to see on the agenda in November or a topic of interest as well. But if you can't think of it tonight, you want to email me after, that's fine as well, and then I can work with Lisa and John to see if we can accommodate as well. So, I'll start on this side. Oh,
I heard some rumors, different areas that town was looking, John, at assessing the washroom policies and where we are in terms of washrooms at the town facilities. Is that something that just hearing rumors of, or is there something in the works?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of that, but that sounds like something that Parks might be reviewing. I can certainly find out and.
I mean, specific to Shepherd's Bush, I know there's conversations about the washroom facilities in Shepherd's Bush. Whether there's one about policies, I don't know, but.
I seem to have heard that there was, as a general, where are we in terms of washroom facilities at all of our parks? And how do we stack up against other communities in terms of what we're providing? I think it's fairly common, there's a shortage of washroom facilities at most of the town.
We're certainly growing our facilities, but not necessarily our washrooms.
Yes. Exactly.
Good point. Michelle? Anything for new business or topics?
Was that bait?
Sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I would stress, it's not at this elevation for the sports plan, but obviously facilities were strapped from a soccer perspective, and it is still one of the fastest growing sports, maybe not next to pickleball, but definitely indoor soccer is still a stretch. With outdoor, we gained St. Anne's turf field this year, which helped. New GW Williams replacement school turf. So we're not so strapped as we were last year for summer soccer. But for indoor facilities, I'm just wondering if there's any other partnerships that we could have with, like Country Day School in King or other domes that we would be able to use for facilities. Right now, we're triple, quadruple booked on single pitches in our Aurora Dome.
Good, well, it's something we can take back and have a conversation and maybe bring something forward for the next meeting, is that okay?
Yeah, and I think there's a business case that I can probably get some information from the club about.
Yes, John,
Sure. So it's certainly something that's on our radar. We're always looking for those potential partnerships. Most of the domes out there are privately run. There's and when you look at something like Country Day School, we've done some research on the other domes, and they're all fully booked. So for us to try to enter into a partnership with Country Day School, for example, they wouldn't be interested, and it wouldn't benefit Aurora in any way because they're all fully booked anyway. What doesn't exist is an underutilized sports dome.
Absolutely.
So we're always looking at opportunities for where that may, if there's a partnership opportunity that we identify, staff will certainly explore that and bring it to council for consideration. I mean, places like new GW Williams and St. Anne's, for example, the footprint didn't exist there for the extra space you need for a dome. So it wasn't even an option that we could consider. But we are always looking for that. There's a few facilities identified in the Parks and Rec master plan that are a priority for us. Like a third Class A hardball diamond, things like that. And so we're always on the lookout for those opportunities.
I just have to bang the drum. I know that's very challenging.
Shannon? Charles?
I just wanted to make a couple of announcements about a couple of upcoming events, actually.
Great.
So this weekend is the Multicultural Festival, starts on Saturday at Town Park, 9 a.m. to noon, and then it moves over to Town Square from 12:30 to 5. It's actually the start of a month of culture. So not only Multicultural Festival on Saturday, but there's a number of activities going on all month. And lots of food entertainment on Saturday, some really fun activities around food, make your own tea blend, make your own spice blend, some really fun things around that for the Multicultural Festival. And then I wanted to let the group know about another event coming up on October 6th. We've done what we've called a community canvas, unity on canvas. It's a community mural. It's a mural. So over the past 6 months, we've been out at different events with small ceramic tiles that we've asked people to paint, really with whatever they want. And when all the tiles got put together, there's 300 of them, it makes a canvas. It's tile, and it's a depiction. It's a sport depiction. So it's a group of people in sport. Sport clothing, sport movements, that sort of thing, but it's very diverse. So it shows people of different cultures, race, abilities. And as I said, it's been put together into this giant canvas of 300 tiles. That canvas will live at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex in Community Room C, which is upstairs on the 2nd floor. And there is an unveiling of that on October 6th. It's a Monday from 6 to 7, so everybody is welcomed. You can't come to the unveiling, try and check it out at some point. Like I said, it's in Community Room C, which actually has glass walls, so even if the room's in use or it's locked, you'll still be able to see it. But it's a really fun community project that we've been doing. Like I said, 300 tiles painted by various members of the community at various events, and it just depicts sort of this unity, this diversity in sport. So I just want to let the group know about that as well.
Thanks very much. If there's nothing further, motion to adjourn. All right, Sean, thanks very much for everybody. Have a great night. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone.